How to make your Subaru WRX last 200,000 plus miles without any major maintenance. In this video, I'm going to give you the exact playbook of everything you need to know about making your WRX last. We're going to be talking about 2015 through present. So that's the 2015 through 2021 and the 2022 plus WRX. This basically applies to all Subarus, but I'm going to give you every single piece of maintenance and interval you need to do to give you the absolute best chance of getting to 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles without any major maintenance on your WRX. If you want to drive these things forever, watch this video and take some notes. Grab your popcorn, but really just take some notes. Let's get straight into it. Obviously, you guys can tell it's snowing. Let's hop into the garage in front of my 2016 WRX and talk about this. Let's get a little up close and personal. Let's go through the list. I've worked on WRXs for the last 9 years. I own a performance parts company, but I also do a lot of maintenance parts. And here's the most important information that you guys are ever going to get as owners. And again, disclaimer, something still could happen. Don't hold me to it. It's a car, but this is the best possible odds. And we're going to talk about things that you might not think about. So let's start. We're going to start with the engine because I think that's the most important thing. Oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. This is high quality name brand oil specific to your WRX, or if your tuner wants you to run a different weight of oil, run that oil if you're tuned. Every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, or if you don't drive a lot, every 6 months is the max that you take it. You change your oil. New filter, and you use a Subaru OEM filter. All filters, you replace every 50,000 miles, and you inspect every 10,000 miles. Cabin air filter, you can change it sooner if it needs to. Engine air filter, if it feels like you need to change it sooner, you can. You're checking it every 10,000 miles, but you're definitely replacing it 50,000 miles, every 50,000 miles, no matter what. And now quickly, let me just break for just a second here. Some of you guys are gonna disagree with me on a lot of these things. I'm coming at this from an engineering standpoint, a specification standpoint from Subaru, a specification standpoint from the manufacturers of the products and what's actually recommended. And yes, you could do things more frequently if you want to, but I'm giving you the reality of the bandwidth of like parts are good for this many miles. But I would say all filters, so fuel filter, you know, that kind of thing. So all filters every 50,000 miles, and then the major ones, engine and cabin air filter, check it every 10,000. All other fluids are going to be changed every 50 to 75,000 miles. The reason there is a kind of a bandwidth there is just when it makes sense. When you're doing a major maintenance, and let's say you have differential fluid in front of it, you got transmission fluid that you could get to, you have coolant, whatever it's going to be. We're going to target that 50 to 75,000 miles just because you're doing all fluids in that. So the coolant, yeah, you can get 100,000 out of it, but just do it every 50 to 75,000. Same goes with brake fluid. I'd say every 50 to 75,000 miles for brake fluid as well. So all other fluids in your car that isn't oil, every 50 to 75,000 miles, or if you're working nearby it, replace it then too. Spark plugs at the minimum, where no symptoms are present, every 50,000 miles. You can get a lot longer from the spark plugs, but you don't want to create symptoms that will do a little bit of damage that might not be evident, that will shorten the useful life of the car long term. Again, we're trying to get that mileage and avoid major repairs in the meantime. Here's one that people don't often think about, the PCV valve. We're going to replace the PCV valve, which can get clogged, it can get gunked up, it can do all those things every 50,000 miles. You might not know what that is. It's worth a Google. At some point, we're going to make a full video about what the PCV valve is because it's not that talked about. But replace that every 50,000 miles, and it's fairly easy to do on your own. It's a very inexpensive-ish part. Actually, they're a little bit more expensive than you think, but it's easy to do. Here's a big one that nobody thinks about. Your battery. Yes, that is part of your engine. Remember, your engine uses your battery to do things like fire up, start up. Having the power to do those things make a big difference, especially when you're trying to turn an engine over, and that can, low battery and trying to turn an engine can put undue stress or extended, unpowered compression on a cylinder or something like that, which could over time do some damage and lead to something. So batteries are actually really important, especially because our cars, WRXs come with smaller batteries, with smaller capacity, and typically the way we use our WRXs, we use them outside and do all those things. So my recommendations with batteries, every 2 to 3 years, or every 100,000 miles if you drive a lot. So if you drive a lot and you put 100,000 miles in 2 to 3 years, do your battery. Or if you do 2 years and you put 100,000 miles, do your battery. Otherwise, 2 or 3 years, replace your battery. I know that that's a little bit of buzzkill and most people wait for there to be problems. I'm telling you now, do not wait with these WRXs. Replace your battery every 2 to 3 years. And that batteries are expensive, but if you do things like Costco and other things, there are ways to inexpensively change your battery. Belts, or i.e. one belt that you're really going to change on your own. But belts every 50 to 75,000 miles. Again, you don't want something to go wrong with your belt. So we're doing that a little bit probably ahead of schedule at 50,000 miles, but every 50 to 75,000 miles. Belts on these cars are so easy to do. They're right at the front. You don't even have to really get anything out of the way. You can usually do a belt without even moving your fan out of the way. Here's where we get into the stuff that's getting into a little bit of the unknown for the average WRX owner. So at every 75 to 100,000 miles, I want you to get a walnut blasting done by a shop that takes Subarus and does that often with Subarus. What a walnut blasting is it cleans the intake valves of the engine, and as these cars are direct injection, our cars burn everything that comes through the fuel. There isn't like a secondary fuel filter that's then filtering before it goes through an injector, or it's not clogging like a port injection injector. It's just getting direct injected. So what ends up happening is a little bit more of that like carbon or byproduct that's in your fuel gets sprayed in and gets burnt off at the valve intake, creating a carbon buildup. And if you know a lot about WRXs, you'll know that, when you tune a higher mileage WRX, you got to get it walnut blasted. I just genuinely think for, reliability, for like for, consumption and performance, it's a big deal. But the walnut blasting, again, your car might start running a little rough as it gets more and more carbon buildup over many, many, many tens of thousands, 150,000 miles. But what this is really going to do is this is really going to reduce the odds of it causing a major maintenance problem, right? We just want to reduce the risk of that carbon buildup causing something major long term. Next one, something that most people don't think about otherwise, it is cleaning your oil pan, right? So when we empty our oil, right, we think that it flushes all the oil out of the system. The problem with that is the oil drain is on one side of the oil pan usually. It's not at the apex of the bottom of the oil pan. There are actually some reasons for that. And we won't necessarily get into all of them now, but there's a lot, you see it a lot, and there are some engineering reasons behind that. But again, that's a hefty discussion for another time. What I recommend is every 100,000 miles that you actually drop your oil pan and clean it out. This will do two things. This will give you a really good understanding of what's going on with your engine. You'll see if there's any metal, silicone, RTV, that kind of stuff, right? So you'll get a really quick health check if there's something catastrophically wrong. Likely there's not, because you're not going to have any symptoms, but that's the only way to find out early. The other thing is you'll be able to really get anything that's gone through your oil system, or bad or burnt oil that's become a little bit more crude is not the right word, but the density of the oil has raised a little bit more, so it always sits underneath that drain line, still cycles through the engine and is not performative to the rest of your oil, but it allows you to clean that off. The other thing that you'll find with oil pans is as oil, maybe you get a little bit of mixing with water or air when you do your oil change, or there's a little particulate, or you name it, oil can burn, it can change its properties, and all of a sudden what you'll find is that a high mileage oil pan will have kind of a slick buildup of imperfect oil on the outside of that pan, and you want the least amount of mixing of that, because when that, let's say, bad oil recirculates through your engine, it's not acting as oil, it's acting as something that's not oil. So when you think oil is like cooling your engine or lubricating things, that other sludge or whatever isn't actually doing that. And it's not a lot, it's very little. But at every 100,000 miles, if you can just clean that off and reseal your oil pan up, you're gonna really extend what you get out of your engine. This is actually more common than you'd actually think it is with all other cars. Again, with self-maintenance cars, you don't see it as much, but it is a fairly common thing to do. The last one, and something that I do really recommend, is at around 150,000 miles or 100,000 miles, if you don't have access to good fuel, is actually cleaning your fuel tank. There's a couple ways to do this. Obviously, dropping your fuel tank is probably actually the hardest and easiest. It's the easiest way to get a really good clean and the hardest way to get a clean. The other option is to pull your fuel pump out and clean it that way. You actually can't fully siphon out your gas through your gas fill, because there's an anti-siphoning device in WRXs. So you can't siphon it that way, but you don't need to clean it with soap. You just want to fully drain it, because fuel is not created equally. There are things like bad fuel, there's fuel with water mixed in it, there's a certain amount of water in the tanks from condensation for constant fill-ups. When you think of when a gas truck is going to a gas station and it's raining out, they don't not deliver the fuel, they still deliver it, and a little bit of that rain or water gets in there, and after many, many, many years it builds up in the fuel tanks at these gas stations, and then every time you pump your gas, you get a small portion of it. So that's why over 100 or 150,000 miles, that little bit of portion will slowly build up into things like water or any other type of byproducts that, your car can't take. Remember, fuel gets compressed, and that's how it explodes and creates the combustion cycle. If you put water in there, water doesn't compress in the same way, right? So it will lock or seize your engine, right? Are you getting enough water in your gas tank to do that? Likely no, but this is one of those things that, one, you will see a difference in performance for sure. Your car will run cleaner. Two, you greatly reduce the risk of long-term damage. That's huge. And three, there is some precedent to say as we get to higher mileage cars, 20 years ago, 100,000 miles was a high mileage car. Cars these days are getting up to 200,000-300,000 miles. We're starting to see other things kind of prevail in terms of problems. And this is one that we're seeing more and more as cars get higher and higher mileage, where, long-term accumulation of bad byproducts of gas in a gas tank is tough. The only thing with our gas tank is they're split bed, meaning the gas tank doesn't just sit under one side of the car. It sits under one side and it sits under the other side, and there's a little bit of an arch between the two. So if you drain one side, you can't just assume the other side's drained if you're cleaning it out. So you actually, when you feed your little hose in to pump the gas out to make it fully pumped out, you pump it on one side and you got to feed it to the other side and pump out the other side. And I learned that the hard way with this WRX. It's a bit harder than you'd think, but it's actually not hard to pull a fuel pump and clean it out that way. Or, if you have a way of jacking your car up in the air, dropping a fuel tank isn't that hard on these cars. So that's it for the engine. There's a few other things. There's your clutch, right? And you guys know that I have a slightly different opinion on clutches. A lot of people push as far as they can on a clutch, which you should do, right? Here's the deal. If you plan on owning your car forever, which actually I'm always surprised by the fact that a lot of people on this channel and viewers of this channel want to drive the car until it's just dead. They want to get as many miles on this car as possible, which all power to you. Driving your clutch until it goes out could damage your transmission, right? When a clutch fails, that's where you ruin your transmission, right? So the trick is replacing your clutch before it fails. Usually there's warning signs. But as you push a clutch further and further and remove more and more of the material of that clutch, when your clutch begins to fail and gives you those warning signs, you don't have the same period of time. So a clutch with 50,000 miles on it that begins to fail is going to give you much more time horizon to the point where you feel those symptoms to the point where it fails. Because those symptoms, it's not necessarily uniform thinness of the clutch material itself. Usually you get kind of bottoms, you get hills and valleys on your clutch. These are micro hills and valleys, but that's what's causing that slipping, right? If your clutch just was too thin and it just spun your transmission, you wouldn't start slipping. So it kind of there's a gradual take to it. If you put 150,000 miles on your stock clutch and it still doesn't need to be replaced, one, good for you, you know how to drive this car. But two, your point to failure and that mileage to failure is very, very tight. So my recommendation is 100,000 miles is the max that you want to put on a stock clutch. It's easy to replace. If you're that good of a driver, you're probably that good of a mechanic, do it yourself. Clutches at 100, at max 150,000 miles if it's an OEM clutch. I personally recommend clutches at 50 to 75,000 miles for people that I know, but 100,000 miles is for sure. The other two areas that you could have major maintenance, it's not going to keep you off the road necessarily. It might, but again, the preference here is no major maintenance until 200,000 miles. Is one, rust. No matter where you live, right? If you don't take care of these cars, the paint is thin, there isn't protective coating on the underside of the suspension. Rust or damage to the underside of these cars, think like CV boots or any type of greased, joint or anything like that. If you're not taking care of it, that will cause a super expensive maintenance to happen. So here's the deal. It's pretty simple. You wash your car and you wash the underside of your car. You don't use product on the underside of your car, you just spray it down. If you live in an area where salt or chemicals are placed on the ground for snow, 1 or 2 times during the season, you use automotive soap and you clean your vehicle underneath the car. You try to get that salt and the chemical layer off. What you're doing here is you're trying to get anything that you could eat into protective wraps, because you have other things on your engine that are protected, boots or any type of silicone, grease joints or things where a grease line is protecting the interior of the thing. Think again, CV boot, stuff like that. A lot of your suspension parts. And you're protecting the underlying metal of the car. That's really important. It's amazing how quickly, when you think oh, it's just a bit of rust, it could be replacing 6 or 7 components underneath your car. It goes from nothing to a problem really quickly if you don't take care of your car. The other big thing with that is, on the flip side of it, right, if you don't care about your paint and that kind of stuff, don't listen to me. But if you want your car looking like you're not a hobo, it isn't hard to get through all your paint to the point where there's no more paint on this car. Sounds silly, but the paint thickness on this car is super thin. So there are folks that I run into often that don't use the right type of soap when they're cleaning their cars, and by the time the car has 50,000 miles, it has spots of rust on the hood with no paint because they've stripped all the paint and the clear coat off. It is important. Automotive paint, right? And if you're going to use products on it, whether that be a wax, a clear coat, a ceramic coat, whatever it is, make sure you use something that is tested and widely used. The amount of ceramic coats that I've seen fail because people get a good deal on Amazon, or a buddy of a buddy tells them to use a ceramic coat and it actually eats through a clear coat and then you get tons of long-term damage, happens all the time. I kid you not, all the time. And the one last thing, we kind of alluded to it, is suspension stuff. So the one thing with driving an all-wheel drive car, especially for many, many, many miles, again, we're trying to avoid major expensive maintenance here, is understanding that our suspension works in harmony, right? And if one piece of that suspension is not working in harmony, it's not that the suspension doesn't work, but it chases all of the other things out of tune. So think about a song, right? If you have 8 people singing in the song, right, and they're all in harmony, the song sounds perfect. But if you have one person there that's singing the song that is so far out of harmony that the other singers are listening to it, it slowly starts pulling them out of harmony and into the wrong into the wrong dimension, or whatever you want to say, and the song doesn't sound as good, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and they get further and further away from perfect because then the juxtaposition has changed, yada yada. That's probably a bad example, but it stands true with these cars. That one thing that's going to chase you out of alignment, for an example, perfect way of thinking about it. So if you don't get an alignment, right, and you start getting out of alignment, you're going to get fully out of alignment really quickly on all-wheel drive, right? Because all the parts of the car are going to chase itself out of alignment because they're constantly trying to overcorrect because they're constantly working together. These cars drive and operate their drivetrain as if it's supposed to be perfect, which is great because when it's perfect, it's amazing. But when it's not perfect and something's out of bounds, right, the car doesn't know how to correct. It just runs as if it's perfect, which means you might get over revolutions. You might, really lean on a level of camber that you're not supposed to, or lack of camber that you're not supposed to. I'm gonna leave this fairly simple for you guys. You need to make sure that you treat your drivetrain well. And the one way that you can do this, it's actually pretty simple, is just to get an alignment every 1 to 1.5 years. Is my rule of thumb. That's probably pushing it, but alignments are getting more expensive. So this is one of those few areas that I don't want you to over align your car, because the two things are going to happen. If in that 1.5 years you hit a pothole or something and it knocks you out of alignment, you'll know, you're going to feel it, right? It's an all-wheel drive car. It's going to pull to one side. It's going to pull a little bit more aggressively. If you hit another hole, you'll start to feel the difference. The other thing is, in a perfect world, you can get a couple years out of your alignment, but 1 to 1.5 years, get an alignment. That it's going to keep you safe. If you don't get an alignment, it's not also that it's just perfect. You might be like, it's just suspension parts, whatever. Yeah, wheel bearings will go. That's one of the common things that you see. People that drive their WRXs out of alignment for long enough, all their wheel bearings will need to get replaced. And wheel bearings aren't necessarily inherently expensive, but if you put a lot of miles on your car, again, if you don't listen to this and you've got 150,000 miles on your car, doing a wheel bearing on these cars can be expensive and a pain in the butt because of the time it takes to separate the wheel bearing from the actual drivetrain. And that is, I cannot understate that enough. That was just straight information, guys. And I don't know if this was a video that you wanted to see, but I saw another video that was kind of like this, and I feel like they really dropped the ball because they were like, change your oil and change your filters. And, it's probably good to do it at 6 or 10,000 miles or whatever. It just felt not personal, and it felt like it wasn't coming from somebody that really understood long-term maintenance cycles of these cars and had seen enough of them that you get to kind of see through the the possible problems that could come through not maintaining these cars. And if you drive WRXs and you have for a while and you're really into the community and you're really into these cars, you're gonna have listened to this video and be like, maybe I get 1 or 2 things out of it, right? But if you're newer and you're getting a lot of things, one, just know that you're where most people are, but this is the stuff that's important. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see something that's a little bit more in depth for this for other Subarus or any other car, or you want me to dive a little bit more into the maintenance, let me know. I know that usually the maintenance videos don't do very well, and I know that you guys don't love the informational videos. I promise. The informational videos are really just because it's cold out right now. I've got a bunch of fun stuff going to be happening once it gets warm. It's just been cold and snow. We've had 2 feet of snow in Boston for the last month. It's been miserable. So the car has been doing really well. And I got a huge project on this car. I know that you guys have been asking for an update, and it's coming. I just to give you perspective, the smallest problem I'm dealing with this car right now is a clock spring. And if you guys know what that headache of a problem is, you'll know that that's a pretty damn big problem. So we're almost to the point where this will pass inspection. I gotta do the clock spring, I gotta do some other things, and videos will be coming out. But I wanna do fun things with this car behind me, but we're getting there. And another reason where you're like, is this guy talking crap? The answer is no, because if you guys follow the channel, you'll know that I've like ripped this thing apart to the T beyond all the other things I've done in my career. And yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'd love some feedback on this one because this is a little bit different from the normal for this channel. And if it's boring, please let me know if it's boring. That's the biggest takeaway. If you guys are still here, one, let me know if you're still here because I love those comments. And two, if this video is boring, please let me know. Let's get it 0 to 10. 10 being super boring, 0 being interesting. Because I need some feedback. I need some feedback. Some of you asked for it, but sometimes the videos that you guys asked for, nobody else wants to watch. Not that that isn't a good idea. I like making these videos. But I'll see you guys in the next video.